So we have data models. Why do we need a data model, and what is a data model, and what do we learn in this session? So we learn what is a data model, how do we categorize our data. We have discussed measurement versus dimensions. I'll take it in a detail so that it gets engraved and you don't forget it anytime soon or later. Identifying what are entity keys, what are names, attributes, dates, and variables. We will see how to verify relationships. Be awake when I'm teaching relationships, because that is what is going to take you, and what, like, that is going to be the food for thought after this session. And you will be always, talking about how to verify entity relationships while we map them. So, and identifying data set types or classifying the various data sets into the various buckets, which helps me with further harmonization. Before we go ahead and before we talk about the media and before we go talk about Datorama fields or Datorama, how it works or how it is set up, let's understand understand what is a placement. Anyone who knows what is a placement?
A placement is in other terms, we can call line item which contains the specific information within the campaign, like
In,
targeting, audience group.
not really.
It's like the ad space which is available in the website, like
Correct, correct.
where the creative is being placed, whether
Right.
it is above the fold or below the fold, like
Exactly
that.
so. You're right, Salman. Um, so placeholders are nothing but it's a placeholder for your ad. So if I talk of this publisher website, New York Times, and James Patterson masterclass being my campaign, the ad that you see is called a placement, right? The campaign that we run is called a masterclass, and you know the campaign that you currently see is a masterclass campaign, and the placement that you see, or else it is also, there are various types of placement. This is called a banner ad, and this banner is basically the placement. So a placement is a placeholder for your ad. The placeholder remains where it is, but you will see due to ad shuffling and ad scheduling, the placements keeps on changing, right? So the placements change, and today there is a James Patterson masterclass campaigns placement, like James Patterson masterclass campaign running. It's at tomorrow. It can be anything else, maybe a Nestle Maggie, or or like a Tesla running its car ad that you can have in the placement, right? So the campaign is displayed in two sites, New York Times and Facebook. So these are called publisher sites. Okay, so what is a publisher site? A publisher site offers me inventory in which I can display my ads. So, um, I have worked with one of the one of the largest publishers still today, and which is also a search engine company, which is a search engine basically. I've worked in that company as well, and whereby we used to see people coming up with, there are calendars in which the creatives run for the various placements that, or the inventories that people have to offer to the various clients for displaying their ads. Now, you will not see the same ad always, because there is something called ad shuffling, there is something called ad scheduling, whereby a scheduler basically shuffles an ad after a given point of time. Then there are ads which are called HPTO ads, or homepage takeover ads. What is a homepage takeover? Whereby the entire homepage is taken by an advertiser, and the entire day you see the same ad while you log into that particular website. You will see that the home page has been taken. You will see companies when they come up with any of the new launches or new campaigns or new products or new changes. Latest I saw, like, Grofers becoming Blinkit. So when Grofers became Blinkit, it basically uh, doing HPTOs in a regular basis, whereby whenever you go to the certain search engine and search for anything, you will see one of the placements in one of the publisher websites, which basically is showing the entire day the Blinkit ad that comes up. So now over here in this example, we have the masterclass campaign, and this basically gets showed up in New York Times and Facebook. The yellow square represents the advertising space on the site, which is called placement, and which is called which in Datorama terms is called a media buy. Now from here itself, while we are talking Datorama, we will call placements as media buy, and let's abide by it, and let's talk placements as media buy and nothing else. And let's not forget this, because in the next lessons, when we are mapping data, when we are harmonizing data, we are doing this, that, what not, uh, and we are talking of media buys. We should not think, like, after a good night's sleep, that what is a media buy, dude, and why are they talking about media buys? So it's nothing but placements that we call as media buy. So again, this is an area rented out to advertise the masterclass campaign. That's basically your masterclass campaign, which is the creative. And the yeah, and this placement can hold anything, like, it can hold an image, a graphic, a short video, rich ads. Anyone who knows what's a rich ad?
Which contain text and
Interactive
images.
ads.
Yeah, text and images.
Sorry. One at a time, please.
It's have text and images both.
So it can have everything. Basically, it can have a GIF. It can have, and moreover, a rich ad isn't. Rich ad can be an engaging ad as well. It can contain a GIF. It can contain, like, anything from a short video to an image or anything. And basically, a placement can also accommodate um, and a graphic, an image, a short video. You can see clickable stuffs as well, whereby you move your cursor and the ad moves along with your cursor, or you go to a placement and as you move your cursor, you see the ad revealing itself. So all those are parts of rich ads um, in a particular publisher website, right? So let's recap. We have sites like Times, Facebook, CNN, and BBC. We have the James Patterson masterclass campaign running. A publisher rents out advertising spaces, and those spaces are called media buys in the site. They are called, and we will call them as media buys, but in other terms, they are also called. They're generally called placements, and in Datorama we will call the placements as media buys. These media buys are rented out to the advertisers periodically. Advertisers use them to display campaigns, right? And if today we have the James Patterson ad um, running, the selected campaign, tomorrow it can be a Gordon Ramsay teaches cooking. So basically, the placement is part of the website, but the campaigns and creatives keep on changing, and The campaign can be the same as well, but the creatives keep on changing. It can be a masterclass Gordon Ramsay ad that has come up, right? So what is a data model, and why do we need a data model? So a data model is a framework onto which absolutely all the data is applied, and it is an abstract flowchart of data relationships. It provides with like aggregation contexts from various sources, determines data attribution to ensure flexibility and accuracy in slicing the data. So when we call it as an framework onto which on all absolutely all the data is applied, we mean that um, it's like a data structure in which all your data gets structured. How your data may come in various shapes, in various forms, with various components which can be identical or non-identical. But when you have the data model and you know the relationships that going in the model, you can map them to the Datorama model fields. It can be a sales data, it can be a plant data, it can be a media tools data. If while we talk about those, it can be a search data, it can be a social data, it can be a display data. But if your mapping, if your understanding of the data model is perfect, then you can actually go ahead and map whatever data, be it digital, non-digital, marketing, non-marketing data. If you understand relationships and if you map the things correctly, it basically falls into the same framework, and it acts as part of the framework, and it helps you to create a scalable model whereby if you filter something, not only your digital data gets classified, but also the non-digital or the non-identifiable datorama data, non-identifiable data which is not identifiable by Datorama as an existing model, but based on relationships, when you map them correctly, it basically falls into the same framework and helps you. It's a flowchart of data relationships. We have talked about data relationships. What is media buy, or what is placement? Why is placement, taken as? Why is placement being taken, and why not campaign, or why not site, or why not site medium being taken as the data relationship? Um, Granular thing for an ads data set, or for a conversion tag. Why is it that the conversion tag is being uh, taken as the main entity for the data set, or for a search data set? Why are keywords taken as the main entity for a search data set? We need to understand these things, whereby we need to understand what is the lowest level of granularity in a data set, and we need to identify that as the main entity. Why? Because when we find the lowest level of granularity in a data, every other every other component in the data set basically has some relationship with this granular data, with this granular, the granular column or the component. With the most granular component is the with it, all the other components have some of the other relation, which we can establish, and thus this most granular part of our data set becomes the main entity, which not only keeps relationship with all the other components in the data set, but also helps us build relationships with other data sets, which also may have the same granular component, or any other component that they have, but there will be shared entities which will help them culminate, which will help us culminate all the data sources together and put it in the form of data model. Aggregation of data, yes, aggregation of data is pretty much necessary, because you may have data coming from 5 sources, but nothing is aggregating. There is no need. Every data source is acting as an individual silo. that doesn't give you any kind of information. Neither you can put a report, neither you can create a dashboard, nor you can fetch any insights, nor you can do any kind of optimization unless you have all the things coming in an aggregated manner. Correct? Data attribution, definitely data attribution. We have mentioned attribution is nothing but attribution is attributing or giving credit to all the sources which has brought us the last level purchase or uh, conversion from happening. So data attribution is nothing but all those components coming together, all these data sets, all these data sources coming in a single data model to attribute or to give credit to all the components which are mapped correctly in a certain manner, framework in in a framework with correct data relationships, with correct aggregations, which basically attributes towards the accuracy in slicing the data. So if I'm slicing the data by date, campaign, site, my impressions, clicks, retweets, tweets, um, viewability or uh, bounce rates or views or everything gets accurately sliced for that campaign or for that date, for that campaign, for that site. Where if I want the accurate slicing happening, we need to keep in mind the data model. Why is it important? It is important because the main challenges in working with data is cumbersome, time consuming, and data pre-processing is something that we spend time on. Yes, it's a cumbersome process which takes time. You'll see that you receive your data and you visualize your data. That these two things happen very smoothly. I won't say it happens very smoothly while ingesting your data. You have many dependencies, but then the most time consuming part is this part whereby you are harmonizing the data and you are aggregating the data together, you're checking the quality of the data, you're checking what went wrong, what is right, where are duplicates, what has been wrongly mapped. Correct? The need to unify business insights from different sources. um, yeah, so once you have unified all the things, you can come up with business insights. But if you are not able to unify your data correctly and according to the data model, how will you find any insights? Because you don't have the holistic view of the data, and you need holistic view of the data in order to find insights for yourself. Comparing and analyzing data from various sources using in uniform criteria. Yeah. So again, comparing and analyzing data from various sources, we need to maintain uniformity. We need to aggregate them, and then only we get it. The data model places different sources, structures, dataset types on the same schemas. It's very self-explanatory. You may read it once more. And we proceed. What does the data model allows us to structure and organize our data, to establish clear relationships in our data and derive insights, and merge multiple data sources and formats. Right? This is an interesting thesis whereby you see 60% of your data or 60% of the share of work that you do is gone in cleaning and organizing data. This is really true, right? This is pretty true. We do spend this much of time in cleaning and organizing, but uh, but when we look at the data from this standpoint, in Datorama and its framework and data model, we see a pretty good, um, like now at least when we are at the start of the training, a pretty good potential in data model which helps us to get rid of this thing. So yeah, this slide tells that you can teach Datorama to do that, anything. So once you have established mapping, Datorama does the rest for you. Yeah, so this is where what I was talking of, bringing together insights from various sources. So as I said, your data sources come in different shapes altogether. When I say different shapes, their structure is different, right? Maybe some things are same, but then every source has its own unique ability, which differentiates it from one or the other. So if you see these three, Facebook ads, Twitter ads, and double-click campaign manager, you will see that date and campaign are the two things which is present in both the in all the three data sources, right? However, the unique metrics that these sources bring are reach, photo views, likes and retweets, revenue and conversions. So these are some of the unique things. Now, retweets I'll not get from Facebook and DoubleClick. Uh, similarly, Facebook and DoubleClick has its own set of things which are not present in the other sources. But campaign and date are the columns which are present in all these three. So yeah, it's being described as a puzzle in which, each of these data sources are equally important. And if all the sources act as individual silos, we have nothing as inference, but we are always wandering around how to do or how to keep all these fragmented data um, together so that we can see the bigger picture. So data model helps us by connecting the data sources, by identifying the common denominators and report seamlessly. So we need to find a common denominator by browsing through the data model, which will take us through and which will help us identify the end goal. So as mentioned, campaign underscore name, and campaign name, all the three things are alluding towards the same thing. So data model, first thing is data model helps us with standardization. We need standardization across the identical columns that comes from the different sources. So data model helps us in standardization. Now all the three campaign underscore name, and campaign name attributes to the same dimension, and data model helps us in identifying and unifying them together. Now, if you see these three sources whereby Facebook ads has date, campaign, reach, photo views. Twitter ads has a campaign masterclass 17 running whereby it has one likes and retweets, and then the double click campaign manager has revenue and conversions running for the same masterclass campaign. So if I have the view that I want is the last two lines, right? Whereby we have the date, we have the campaign name, and I want to see for this single campaign how much are the reach, likes, revenue, and conversions. Though all these are coming from different sources, but I want to see them one beside the other. And this is possible when the data model is set properly, so that it helps us not only with unification. Firstly, it helps us with standardization. So campaign names are different in different sources, but we have a standard name, campaign name, which basically acts as the campaign name for all the three sources. Then it helped us with unification. We unified all these tools together, all the three sources together, channels together, not channels but data sources together. And thirdly, it helped us with aggregation. It helped us aggregate the data and show up. Correct. So these things are possible only when my data model is done correctly. Any questions, guys?
No, none from my side.
Perfect. Next comes categorizing our data. This is one of the very important categorization that we need to do for the data when we receive. We have discussed this, right? So data has to be classified into two things: dimensions and measurements. Dimensions have entity dimensions and general dimensions. And under entity dimensions, we have an entity key, entity name, and entity attribute. However, in general dimensions, we have date and variable dimensions. Let's look in detail about the measurements and dimensions. Yesterday we have discussed. So measurements, as we have discussed, are quantitative ones. Dimensions are qualitative ones. Measurements can be used used with operators like mathematical operators, whereby they can be aggregated, they can be subtracted, they can be used for calculations. However, the dimensions are qualitative metrics which defines the qualitative aspects of the data, and it helps us know the measurements better by by qualitative, by quantify the measurements better based on the qualitative attributes that they provide us with. So let's see like how it helps us. So in an Excel, if you have 10,000 impressions written, does it make any sense to you? No, right? So if you have a date, so here we are seeing how a quantifiable measurements becomes helpful when we add dimensions to it. So we add a date column to it, to an impression column. Now I know, the year, month, or day in which the impression was garnered. Next comes geolocation. So now I know that for this date in NYC, I have this in this. So this gives me an impression. This gives me info about the state, country, and continent. Next comes campaigning. So now I know for this date in New York City for the campaign masterclass. Next comes the campaign category. In the campaign masterclass in category of e-learning. Next comes the placement ID. That for this placement ID, we have this. Now, a single column never makes any sense to us, and we won't be inferring anything out of it. But when it is, um, it is culminated along with, it is married along with the dimensions at place. It starts making sense to us because now we have the various other factors which helps us know from where these impressions have come up, from which location, from which campaign, from what category, from which placement, on which date. And then these 10,000 impressions start making much more sense to us. Now dimensions can be of many ways. Yesterday we were discussing that mm, a number can be a dimension can be a number, a text, a delimited string maybe, which is like a campaign name. Dimensions, you see 160 into 600, these are numbers, but then these are qualitative factors because these are dimensions of a certain ad maybe or a placement, right? It can come in various forms. Now dimensions can be categorized into entity dimensions and general dimensions, correct? Now, what are entity dimensions? Entity dimensions contain entity key, entity name, and entity attribute. Now, what is this entity that we are talking of? Now, let's consider this example whereby we have an employee of an organization, and he or she has his ID card. Now, when you see now what is an entity key? Entity key is nothing but the unique representation of an employee in an organization or in anywhere, in any place. It can be a campaign ID, it can be a placement ID, it can be an employee ID, it can be your bank's, consumer number, or what is it called? Customer name, customer ID, customer number. So anything, your Aadhaar number, your PAN number, that is unique to you, right? Any unique key is basically considered as the entity key, right? Entity name is basically the name that is associated. Now, entity key is always unique. So, if you have an employee with the name of with an ID of 007 in your organization, then 007 is set for the James Bond in your organization, and it can be it like it can never be duplicate for any other bonds. So if you have five of you sitting beside, there can be people with same names, but there cannot be people who are having the same employee IDs or the same PAN card numbers or the same things. If it is there, then then a very big scam is going on maybe. But then technically, the unique key that is used as an identifier for a person, for a thing, for a campaign, for a placement, or for any of the entities that is in place. Now, if Sambit is an or if Salman is an entity, then his entity key is his employee ID. If uh, John is an entity, if Vinod is an entity, so all these are entities which have an entity key of a certain name, a certain key which is unique to them. Now, entity name is something which is associated to a unique entity key, but entity name can be duplicates as well, correct? But the entity name associated to the entity key can be has to be unique. Now, with the ID 007, you cannot have two names. You cannot have James Bond and Vinod together. So an entity key is a unique key which has a unique entity name, right? But why do we consider entity key as the as an identifiable source, or as something which will help us in figuring out any kind of uniqueness? Because that number is unique, but John or Salman, there can be 10 Salman in the company, but each of those Salman is differentiated by their and you employee IDs, correct? So entity name cannot be an unique identifier because it can be duplicate, correct? And then comes the attributes of an entity. So your gender, your birth date, your preference of food, veg or non-veg or anything. All these are attributes for a certain entity, correct? So that's how we categorize. Now, employee ID is your entity key. The employee name is your entity name, and the various attributes of gender and birth date becomes the attributes for the entity John Smith. Let's tally the same features and the same same characteristics with an ID with an ad. So when we have a placement of James Patterson masterclass campaign, this placement has a certain ID, correct, which we call as media buy key. So we call the placement as media buy. We are aligned. Now this ID number MB456ABC, this becomes the media buy key or placement ID, right? A placement ID is unique to this placement, correct? So placement ID or media buy key is something which is unique to this content, to this creative that is displayed in the placement. Media by name is basically now this becomes my entity key. The media by key becomes the entity key. Media by name or the placement name becomes my entity name, and media by size, size is a banner. Media by targeting type is direct. All these become the attributes of the entity James Patterson teaches writing. the media by name. Is it clear, guys? Is it identifiable? Is it making sense?
Yep. It
Yes,
makes
yes.
sense.
Perfect. So yeah, so this becomes my entity key, this becomes my entity name, and these become the attributes. Now, is all characteristics are all the characteristics that we see for a certain entity media buy, are all these things that are there, like media by size, media by targeting, media by um, device targeting, or whatever that is there for a certain thing, are all these attributes. We need to verify that, because one media by key is associated to one media by name and its certain attributes, and we will see, like when we are deriving relationships, we need to figure out if those hold true and if they can be called the entity keys or names or attributes. Now, in general dimensions, we have date. Now, any data uploaded must have a date column. Oops, date column has changed into day column due to the typo, and Datorama follows it too. So it's not day, it's date. Now, you have to keep in mind always, guys, that whenever you upload a data, it must have a date. Why? Because apart from date, it doesn't make sense. You have a campaign called Vinod's campaign, and it is having a impression, and it doesn't have a date. So what is it? Vinod's campaign has 10,000 impressions. End of the story. But where, when, why? You don't get any clue, and Datorama doesn't get any clue. So Datorama follows a very simple method of not uploading it. So it tells that dude, come up with a date, or else this data is not getting uploaded. Right? So yeah, and then we have variable dimensions. What are variable dimensions? Variable dimensions are basically dimensions which attribute to the entire workspace and not to a specific entity.